Oh, wait a minute. So before Christian starts, welcome to this session about continued support to implementation. So that's the second session with this title this morning. So as you just saw, we will start with Christian Ansog. We will present the status of Inspire implementation in member states.
Now I'm going again.
So now you can go again.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Sorry for hijacking the stage. I just wanted to test if the presentation is there after you made me doubt on that. Yes, the scope of the presentation is to inform you about the current status of Inspire implementation based on the monitoring of the Inspire implementation. So just to wrap up, this is a yearly reporting for those who are not already actively involved in that. It's basically it's a list of data sets which is to be reported, which falls under the scope of Inspire, plus related services, plus indicators. Indicators, for example, about metadata, about the availability of services, about the conformity, about the accessibility of data via services. So this all is calculated to indicators, and there's also as a voluntary information from the countries that they also can attach their raw data which they gather from their catalogs. So how is the reporting? The reporting is focused on XML reporting. We have an XML schema which the countries use. So and in the next slide I can show you how the current data flow is working. This is, as I said, it's a yearly reporting, so it starts typically, is to be reported till the 15th of May. So the reporting cycle starts in usually December or January, then of the year, where we inform, then we remind, we provide the latest updates on the informations and tools we have, and typically by the 15th of May or latest by the 16th in the morning, then we gather all the information. So currently we are operating two different data flows in parallel. So, but they all end up with the same end goal, and this is to upload a file, the reporting file on ReportNet. So we have the more traditional data flow on the left side, where member states can use, for example, tools like the EEA web form, but also you can just build the XML file by yourself, by hand. Then you upload it to the ReportNet. On the other side, this is the kind of new approach which was introduced in 2015. So we had it running 2016 and now this year, is to use the dashboard. So as part of this presentation will also deal about the dashboard. So the dashboard includes a tool where you can harvest your national catalogs and build the file which is needed for reporting to the EA automatically, based on the information you can harvest on your national endpoints. So this then again is an XML file which will be uploaded to ReportNet, and as a last stage we have another dashboard which is purely for visualization of the official information, where then the EA, after we quality check your information, will upload this as the final check and confirmation. Very shortly, briefly on the dashboard. So right now the dashboard operates on a platform funnily called Banana. So, and Banana is no longer supported by the community, so we decided that we will move to a different platform, which is called Kibana. Yes. I promise you this will be the last funny words, because afterwards we go to the content and you might stop laughing. Kibana offers us, for example, advanced visualization for graphs. You can see that here. Most importantly for you and for us also is that the possibility to reference the diagrams and figures directly via URI and other web pages. For example, we could have a country fish as a web page where we can link to interactive graphs which are provided and defined by the dashboard. So these are the main features. For questions, is François here in the room? No? Okay, there's a developer, and for questions, particularly on the technical aspect of Kibana, I would just ask, there he is. Please, can you just stand up so everybody can see you? Well, it's the guy with the hood who was trying to hide. Technical question, please directly to François. It's just more efficient than to ask me. About the implementation, so where are we? So I'm happy to announce that after some years where we could not collect all the member states, now is the first year where we have again a very complete picture. So this is not about blaming or shaming anything, but we are very happy that Ireland now reported and also provided us the data for the last 3 years, which gives us a much more complete picture on where we are here in Europe. And yes, all the countries, another point which makes us very happy, we no longer received any more Excel sheets. So everybody decided to go straight away for XML, which makes our life much more easy. EA likes to give smileys. So now about the content. And this is, again, it's just a reflection of how the situation is. And there are different ways to implement Inspire. So this is not that there is one bad or one good message. It is just some anomalies based on the statistics. So we have a little bit heterogeneous implementation of Inspire, how it is done in member states. And again, it's with no means, it's no bad and it's no good. It's just, for example, if we look at the total number of data sets, so it's steadily increasing all over Europe, but also the cluster is growing. So we have a cluster of 5 countries, which have a different implementation than other countries, and those clusters makes 90% of the number of the total data sets. I know, for example, we know the example from Spain where there is a decision to strategically reduce the number of reported to just have a different approach. So there are reasons why this is like that, and this is by no means good or bad. It's just a pattern. It's a very interesting pattern. So another pattern, if we look at the distribution of the data sets in the annex. So what surprised me a little bit is to see that this year, for example, the Annex 1 data sets were slightly reduced. So we suddenly had a little bit less Annex 1 data sets and not more, where I was actually expecting to see a kind of run towards the deadline we have this year with the implementation of Annex 1. But obviously there's just the opposite tendency, so now we have a slight decrease in the reporting. So, but overall, here again, Annex 3 for most of all is strongly increasing. Also the data sets in Annex 2 is increasing. Just for Annex 1, it's slightly decreasing. So, what does it mean about the services? Of course, and here we know the services is again just a number. There are different ways to implement it. Theoretically, one service per country would do the job, very theoretically. Some other countries like Germany have decided to have over 22,000 different services, which clearly will be there for a reason. So we see a steady increase of the number of reported services across Europe. We also see that the cluster is growing. So here, two countries, Germany and France, make per numbers up to 80% of the overall services, which just shows different implementations in the member states. So again, there's no good and there's no bad. It is just very heterogeneous. Something which again surprised me, if we look at coverage of the services, and here is a slide where we see view service, download service, and view and download service reporting. And which was very surprising to me was that, at least when I took the slide, this was mid of June, the number of view services were suddenly decreasing. Well, it could be explained that the number of view and download services were increasing, but the percentage still doesn't fit. So obviously we have a decrease in the percentage of data sets where there's only view service, and we not have a consistent increase of the view and download services. So here obviously we have more data coming in, but not all of those data which is newly reported or maybe for the first time, which makes the increase in the overall number of the services and data sets, has a view service. So of course we can look deeper into the picture, and we would not be surprised to see that this is mainly due to Annex 3. Then very interesting again is the number of conformant spatial data sets. So here you see a graph where you have the distribution of the conformant data set. So conformant means the data set is declared to be conformant with the data specification. typically by default encoded in GML or other formats, but it is harmonized. So, and again, I was maybe a little bit naive to expect that now we would have already the run towards the November deadline this year would start, but it's actually not the case. So the number of NX1 datasets which are conformant is stable. So this means there is a slight increase because the overall number of reported NX1 datasets was decreasing. So this means here we have a very slight increase of the conformancy, but it is interesting to see how it looks next year, where per theory this number should be 100%. Yes. We also have a slight decrease for the NX2 conformance datasets, and very good. I'm very happy to see that we have a strong increase in the NX3 datasets. But it's very heterogeneous per country. So here, this is again, there are different ways to implement Inspire, and they give us a very different picture. Is Carlo Cipolloni in the room? No? Okay, he informed me that, for example, from the 8,000 Italian datasets which are declared to be conformant in NX1, 7,900 are the Italian cataster. So, and if you look at these graphs, please consider that the scale on the epsilon x is exponential. So we have countries with 200, 250 conformant data sets, and then we have Italy with 8,000, which clearly also has an impact on the statistics. Yes, I come to the conclusions. So as I already said, we have a steady increase of the number of reported data sets, which is very good. We have different implementations in the countries, which result in clusters of 90% of the data, spatial data sets are provided by 5 countries, and 80% of the spatial data services are provided by 2 countries. Again, the numbers are meaningless, but still they give a pattern, and it's an interesting view on the different implementation decisions. So all member states provide us XML for reporting. So this is something which is very important for us, because also it means that the data flow for the Inspire monitoring is getting more operational. And in NX1, which at least for me was, when I did this presentation, was under special attention, I noted that there is a decrease in the number of reported data sets. It might be a decision to report less or to restructure the data in the countries, which then result in a decrease of the NX1 data sets. And there is no significant decrease in the number and ratio of the conformant data sets for NX1. Again, I'm happy to see, I'm looking forward to see the numbers for next year, but I was expecting a stronger increase there. Yes, that would be the end of my presentation, and if there are still 2 minutes, I see, yes, there is another aspect of the monitoring, and if Vlado is in the room, I would give the word shortly to Vlado to also introduce the changes which might happen to the monitoring in the next 1 or 2 years. So as a part of the questions.
Thank you very much, Christian. It was a nice presentation. Maybe just a comment on the data set before regarding the news. I think from my point of view, since we were doing also some kind of the analysis of the monitoring and report, also of the reports from the member states, it seems that some member states actually dropped some data sets which are not conformant. That's why actually it's balanced for the time being, so number of conformant and the number of overall data sets. So it's, for me, maybe it's wrong to drop, because I think the member states should put everything in the infrastructure, but it's another story. Together with DG Environment, actually we are now working actually on the simplification of monitoring and reporting process. There was a presentation actually on Wednesday morning during the MIWP session, so who is interested, you can find more information there. But actually we would like to see monitoring really as a fully automated process, only based on the metadata. So we will probably drop some indicators from the monitoring, so we need to change the regulation, and it's ongoing process. Just to have really indicators which we can actually take out from the metadata. And it's also connected with the further development of country fisheries system. And what we are also trying to do right now in the JRC, together with the member states, we would like also somehow to clean, or to better to say improve, the content of the Inspire geoportal. Because at the end of the day, it would be nice that we have the same things on dashboard and in the Inspire geoportal, which is now not the case. So you have some services which are on the dashboard, but if you look on the geoportal, the numbers are not the same. So this is not good. So we will really like to to have the same consistent numbers and everything. So let's try. It's a challenge, but we are working on it. Thank you.
Thank you, both Christian and Vlado. Has anybody else got a question? Yeah.
Thank you. I always look forward to this presentation every year because it's such nice graph and numbers. I think we perhaps need some guidance for how to define a data set, because there is quite a difference between the member states. You mentioned the Italian example with the cadastre. In Denmark, we only have one cadastre, it's one data set. So there is this difference here. In the spring, I'm the national Inspire coordinator in Denmark. I convinced my EPA, who originally had defined a data set consisted of 5 tables, 5 feature types as 5 data sets. I convinced him, do not do that, it's only one data set. Perhaps that was stupid of me, because then we have looked better in this monitoring.
It's not about better, so
no.
There are different implementation decisions.
Sure, Chris. And I also know that a spatial data set is defined according to ISO, which is quite loose and not very precise. But perhaps some more guidance on what is a data set.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, you're absolutely correct, because right now I think that the numbers on the reported data sets is very difficult to compare. You cannot come up with conclusions, because we know that different countries have taken different implementation decisions. I can just, for example, very prominent, because it was presented by Emilio several times, is the decision of Spain to aggregate the data sets and to report them on a national level, which is in the same way reach the goal as if I would have 8,000 different cadastre parcel tiles reported. These are different decisions, and they all run on a business case. So, okay.
Thank you. I think we will go on with the next presentation. So now we have a presentation from the Finnish Environment Institute. So I hand the floor to Alice Jarvenpa that will present environmental reporting obligation and Inspire, a practical concept to support the identifying process. So right on the same level.
Thank you very much, and it's really nice to see that we still have so many people here on Friday morning and last day of the conference, so welcome also on my behalf. And my presentation is actually continuing the discussions we had on Monday's workshop related to environmental reporting obligations. And I'm kind of presenting now a practical concept that how we have started to identify still missing spatial data sets related to environmental monitoring. And we actually have the whole gang in here. So my colleagues Rita, Lena, Riikka and Claudia are here also, and they are ready to answer your questions after the presentation. So you are all aware of the background thing that the Commission have done this Inspire refit evaluation, and it has been stated that there are still a lot of missing data sets related to environmental reporting obligation. And Finland has set up a member state action plan and to bring these data sets available. And our institute, Finnish Environment Institute, Suka, is one of the biggest spatial data providers and INSPIRE data providers in Finland. And the environmental reporting burden is also really much in our hands, so something needed to be done. And in this specific exercise, our goal was to search and identify those new spatial data sets related to environmental reporting obligations and to create a concept for the identification process. And in this concept, we kind of recognized certain steps or tasks. And as this Commission priority list of datasets worked as a background, we started first by updating this Commission list with national details, like the reporters and national institutes are responsible for certain reporting obligations. Then we classified these reporting obligations based on the spatial datasets already available and the implementation level of INSPIRE. And after that, we identified spatial datasets related to each of these reporting obligations together with our thematical experts, meaning reporters. And we also in the future, we are trying to develop a data management system for environmental reporting for those that we still don't have. And of course, after this, we have to prioritize the reporting obligations for the next tasks and really create an action plan how to make those spatial datasets INSPIRE compatible. And after we had updated the Commission list, we classified these reporting obligations to 4 different groups. And the classification was based on the spatial datasets already available and also the implementation level. And the green group, was that the spatial datasets already identified and reported as INSPIRE datasets. And when we began our process last year, there was none in this group. But I am happy to announce that now we already have these habitat directives and bird directive, etc. in this group. And the second group, where spatial datasets are partly identified and reported as INSPIRE datasets, it's mostly concerning major framework directives where there are already spatial datasets from a start, and we have this data system for those spatial datasets already. And then in a third group, spatial datasets were identified, but they have not been reported as INSPIRE datasets. And we have, for example, the noise directive restriction zones in this, because we are kind of lacking also the information that in EU level that what to do with these datasets. And then we have the group 4, where the spatial datasets are not yet identified. And if we take a closer look, this is unfortunately our longest list and biggest group of environmental directives. And these are that kind of directives that there are no spatial datasets ready, or they are not that clear, and we don't have them in our spatial data systems at the moment. And if we take a closer look to urban wastewater treatment directive, in a starting point, we had that in Finland the reporters had to gather this information from really various data sources, which makes the whole process quite complex. And all these reported data sets are stored as Excel files or XMLs, and they are not in the spatial data formats at all. And they are stored in the depths of ReportNet CDR system. And then we started to go through this reporting obligation with our thematical experts, and we identified, as it was already stated in the minimum list, that there are different kind of location information. So we have this agglomeration ID, it's an ID number. It's not really a spatial information yet. Then we have this urban wastewater plants and discharge points as coordinates. And then we have sensitive areas, and that is actually textual information because we have the whole Finland is a sensitive area, so only the country name is mentioned. And after this identification process, we of course have to go through these data specifications of reporting obligations and to compare those with the Inspire data specifications. And here you can see the snapshots from the ReportNet, what it looks like. And what we learned in this process was that actually this identification process was not easy. And one of the reasons was that our thematical experts are really speaking the other language than what the Inspire experts do. So what we mean by data and what we mean by location and spatial data, etc., etc. So it was a little bit complicated. And in Finland, we also learned that when we think that, for example, this agglomeration ID, that the ownership and responsibilities of the original data, I know that we have these agglomerations somewhere, but who owns that information? What is there? It's a little bit unclear to us. And what was really kind of worrying, we kind of knew this already before, but now it kind of, we realized what it means, that actually we didn't have these reported data sets stored or maintained in national level in Finland, so we can find them from ReportNet, but that's it. So what is the next step is actually that we have to develop a data management system for these data sets that are not in spatial form yet. And we have this data service designed for research data. It's developed at the moment, and we decided to use the same concept in this for the reporting data sets. So we thought that first we create this national metadata for the reporting obligations, and it's produced to Finnish Environment Institute's metadata catalog, and there we select the relevant issues, what have to be mentioned when managing reporting obligations. And of course we also have the links to ReportNet reporting obligation database and CDR, because we don't want to copy that information from there or do the double work. And later on, these spatial data sets and network services can be linked to the profile. And but then we still have the data itself, and we have thought that we would store and share reported data sets using a data portal platform called Suka. We do it with that platform. And then the data is open and easily accessible for public use also. And after that process, we can kind of transform the selected reported datasets to spatial datasets, and only after that we can actually start the process to make the implementation steps of Inspire. So there's a lot of things to do before we really actually are getting to the business itself. So if I say a few conclusions of this exercise, that we have a good situation regarding the framework directives, where there is already spatial datasets available from the start. They are organized in spatial data systems. But in major part of the environmental reporting obligations, location information is in non-spatial form and it's not stored anywhere. And we really hope that these Inspire requirements are taken into account when making or updating reporting guidelines. And we would really like to have some kind of EU-level guidance so that we are sure that we actually are producing harmonized data sets in European level. We would like to have, for example, the Inspire theme for these certain reporting obligations and spatial data sets, because if Sweden selects another one than we do, we really don't have any harmonization done there. And actually I copied a slide from Christian's presentation yesterday, which was really a good one, that EEA has done this exercise with CDDA, and this is exactly what we hope that would happen also regarding the other reporting obligations, that because I think that all the member states are asking the same question. So if it's done once in EU level, then we can all gain from that work. But thank you. That was all.
Thank you for this presentation. So, any question? One?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for this interesting talk. I just like to know a little bit more. You said at one point that the data reported to the EA, you discovered that they are not available on a national level in Finland, but at some point they must have been collected and reported by somebody. And I got the impression, I just, not how this can happen, but it's clear how this can happen, but
it's a very good question how this can
why
happen.
are they no longer? Well, we are happy that we have them on ReportNet, but I would expect that they are also available on the Finnish national level. So this really surprised me.
Yes, it has surprised us too. But after this exercise, maybe we have a better situation. But the situation is that really many times those files are maybe in the individual expert's laptop or in Suka servers somewhere, but they are not really collected in the same way, and we kind of have a lack of information.
So here this exercise clearly shows the benefit that it helps you identifying those data because they are also part of Inspire. So even if they so far away, you were not aware of that.
Yeah, well, we kind of began an exercise related to reporting obligations already 1 year ago when we realized this problem. But I think that this all these links to Inspire and how to implement Inspire, it kind of have put more pressure on us that we actually should do something to this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? I have one if I have some time for that. You said that the Inspire experts and the thematic experts are not speaking the same language, and do agree with that. I was wondering if you had any solution to help both to understand each other, if you had set up some support, some trainings or whatever.
Yeah, I wonder if one of my colleagues would like to answer also this question. We have arranged seminars and events related to Inspire, and one goal is to educate our researchers. But I think that it really hits the persons then when they actually have to do something to their data sets. It's the same thing with us, that we should know more about reporting applications, but
Yeah, thank you. So thank you, right on time. So we'll continue with a Finnish colleague. So Lena Lintilati, we will talk about closing the Inspire implementation gap by contributing to SD technology developments.
Okay, good morning also from my side. So I'm a colleague of Elise, the previous speaker, and I will going to present the approach that we have chosen to close or to works toward closing the implementation gap. First, a few words about Suka. It's a research and expert organization in the environmental domain, operated mainly under the Ministry of Environment. And as from Elise's presentation, we have an environmental SDI for our internal and external users, and have a lot of obligations in reporting and in implementing Inspire. So actually, Suka has been mentioned in 19 Inspire themes in the national legislation, and we haven't identified all the data sets yet. So the challenge that I'm going to tell you about today is how to meet the deadlines of November this year regarding these 3 data sets, Natura 2000 and nationally designated areas, with both of them are reported in the protected site theme, and the river network, which is reported in the hydrographic themes. So we need to provide them according to relevant Inspire application schemas. We need to create download services and view services and metadata which supports the provision of these data sets. And in this presentation, I will focus mostly on download services and on the creation of these harmonized data sets. In Suka, we made an Inspire technology analysis in 2015, and we had a Nordic meeting exchanging experiences. So we got an overview of this software listed here, and our conclusion was that we were not happy with any of the sets of the tools available. They didn't do what we wanted to do in a cost-effective and Inspire-compliant way, also supporting our national users. But later on, there was an open source analysis in-house, and a decision was made there to further investigate GeoServer and start publishing network services with that, also from satellite images and so on. And as many of you know, the alternatives to provide Inspire harmonized datasets as download services is to provide them through an Atom feed, and the other to make WFS. Well, then the alternatives was to only do alternative A, or also to start working with alternative B, the more ambitious one, even though we're not happy with the tools. So the alternatives there was to wait for the tools and technologies, and the other option was to just start working. But of course that takes resources. But our opportunity here was the Envy-based project, which is a Ministry of Finance project, which aimed, for example, to support interoperability developments and supported experimenting with technologies and so on. So we could do a little bit more than was required. We could also have done only the atom feeds. And that's why we decided to go for both. But regarding the WFS, based on our previous experience, we decided only to publish a WFS using one GeoServer instance, which means in our case that we knew we were not going to meet this download services technical requirement to provide a separate endpoint for each dataset. As we had reported 2 datasets in the protected sites theme, we were not possible to do it, but this is how we wanted to do it, so we decided to go for this anyway. But instead we decided to provide one stored query for these protected sites datasets. So then coming to the actual work, and well, the first step, which is not shown here, is of course analysis of the technical guidelines and talking with the domain data experts. We did earlier on some mapping tables, matching in Excel and so on. But as part of this project, we made example GML file as a start. So we decided then what the voidable attributes and when to use them. So we made kind of a ready GML as an example. And then in FME, because our SDE, most of the data sets are in ARC SDE, so we transform them to the relevant Inspire application schemas, database to XML mapping. And then we updated our previous atom feeds, or we made a sister atom feeds providing these harmonized data sets, and worked with that to get them Inspire compliant, and created the needed metadata. So to Christian, you will have three new data sets conformant next year in Annex 1. Yes, they are already in the system. And we wanted to do it in a way so that we can use Esri GeoPortal servers, which we have in-house, and test the harvesting from the Finnish National GeoPortal, which is using GeoNetwork open source. So we wanted to test that and to implement the open source, which is required for atom feeds. Then coming to the other work process for download service, there we used the example GML file too, but instead of doing the full mapping in FME, we created a database schema in PostGIS that we mapped our source data to, and then we mapped that in Hail. We did the Hail mapping, for example, to the protected site schema in Hail, and then used that schema mapping document and put it into GeoServer. GeoServer was used together with App Schema and the Inspire plugin. And as you see, some manual editing was required for the app schema mapping. And then again, there was this metadata updates or creation involved. We needed to create another metadata for this WFS service. And if you compare the flows, you would say that we are doing double the work, but actually those bolded steps, they are common to both approaches. So we could reuse what we had used in the atom feed approach, in the WFS approach. Well, the coloring, those lila or violet color, means that that we had to do in conjunction with the National Land Survey, which is the INSPIRE coordinator. They have the national code list register, and they built it up. We did this together, we tested, and it was a long iterative process. As in our case, we needed to extend one code list for protected sites. You don't always have that phase. If you're using the code list of the INSPIRE code list register, then you don't have that stage. And the green steps we did also together with the National Land Survey. So we had to fix the harvester so that they could harvest our metadata. So, and once it's fixed, we don't have to do it anymore. And the same with the open search support. We have had a lot of cooperation on that. Okay, and then something that wasn't shown on the previous slides, but that we used all the validation tools available several times through the process. So, and the results, we have an atom feed beta version. We still call it beta. When we get home from this conference, we will work on finalizing it. And we also have a WFS service with one stored query for each protected sites data set. The implications that I think is most interesting for you is that we had a lot of communication to software developers on the way, and I think that's kind of the best benefit from INSPIRE community from this project. We realized that the GDAL library, which, for example, Quantum GIS is using, was interpreting the URI HTTP coordinate system references in the wrong way. So we took contact with the developers, and it was fixed in a matter of days, and then it came into the next version of Quantum GIS to support. So the thing was that instead of having Finland standing, our data was lying down. We were able to fix that. And we have communicated a lot with the GeoNetwork developers to improve the open search support. It has been improved. I'm not sure it's 100% according to INSPIRE yet, but at least it has been improved. And then we realized that the Esri GeoPortal service, the INSPIRE templates, they actually don't really fully meet the requirements. And so now we know that, and Esri knows that. So I'm sure that they will take care of it in a matter of time. And another thing that we have decided to fund the improvement of app schema and GeoService, which is ongoing work, and from which all implementers will gain once it's fully in place. And what it's all about, well, once it's in place, it will allow the data providers to publish the same, using the same feature types, with the same namespace more than once within one GeoServer instance, which is not possible at the moment. And then what needs to be done, the connection between namespaces and the workspaces has to be broken, and extensions needs to be done to the app schema. So GeoSolutions is working on it at the moment, and the NV-based project is funding this work. And what I heard, that the next version of GeoServer app schema is out in March, so hopefully this will be part of that update. And I'm already coming to my conclusions. So we have more or less closed the implementation gap for our own institute regarding the Annex 1 datasets. And in the process, we have learned how to use all these different kind of tools to create, inspire, harmonized data sets and services. We have learned about the limits but perhaps most importantly, that I think that we have been able to contribute to the technology development, and in that way support the whole Inspire community in closing the implementation gap. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and also thank you for having everybody benefit from your development. Then I think we all share the same issue, and so sharing the solution is really something great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any question?
Oh, sorry. It's me again. Yeah. Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. You're implementing Atom Feed and WFS in parallel, and for sure you do this because you think of different use cases for each of them. Could you maybe shortly explain what you see as different use cases for Atom and for WFS direct download? Thank you.
Well, I see that Atom Feed, if you want the whole country, and we only provide it in one coordinate system. So if that is good for you and you need the whole country, then it's useful. But the whole idea with WFS is that you can query just part of the data, and you get it exactly in the data, in the coordinates reference system you want. So we just have to wait for the clients to be able to really do this. So it's more future use case there.
Thank you.
Yes, another question there. Wait a minute, the microphone is running to you.
Thank you. Christine Nair from Switzerland. Thank you for the very interesting presentation and the interesting examples for the download services. I seem to be asking at this conference probably a lot of times the same question, because I have the impression that there are a lot of good results and that they're just not always findable. So my question to you is, where would I find, if I didn't have these links, where would I find your services? Would I have to go to your environmental administration office portal, or would there be a central place to find it?
At the moment, you can go to our central, but I cannot some days find them myself, so it's not a good place to look. I'm one of the facilitators of the Inspire Thematic Cluster. I have posted these links there, not these stored queries because they are quite new, but there. But I agree that should be more easy to find these good examples. So something that we facilitators are doing, we are screening what is available and talking to people, and then we have collected for those themes that we have found something interesting. We have collected pages with links in the Inspire Thematic Cluster. So that's a good place.
So maybe
to start looking.
Maybe that would be an encouragement to all
Absolutely.
nations here that
please share your examples.
A lot of very nice results, a lot of good services, but we need to find a good way to find them in an easy way. So, for example, I don't speak Finnish. If I would like to find something, then it would be better if it were in a central place. Same thing for the other nations too. Thank you.
Thank you. So, if there is no more question, thanks, Lena. So, another presentation now from Abigail Page from Eurogeographics. She will talk about the role of open data in the journey to operational European location services.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And as I think one of the speakers said earlier, it's great to see so many people in the room on a Friday morning. I'm presenting this morning on behalf of a partnership project that we're leading at Eurogeographics around open data and our European Location Services program. So it's a little bit different to the other presentations in this stream. I was thinking a couple of weeks ago about, I think the point that the lady just made about discoverability of data, and particularly around open data and open data services. And at the moment, it's a bit of an art, isn't it? How you have all these different licenses that have been really developed under national policy. But for the user, trying to get something together out of these, there's some shades of grey, I think, around open data licensing. So is it still an open data license if the data is able to be reused, but there's 24 pages of terms and conditions around the reuse of that data? And I think it's quite a confusing picture, both on the discoverability of data and also how it can be used by the user. And I was thinking about this open data and art, and apparently open data art is a thing. And there's an example here of some open data art, which I thought was quite interesting. And this is an artist who's curating some work in Latin America, who took some of the open data from the São Paulo citizen portal and printed it on tax receipts and then let it go free into the city to explore different interactions between the physical and technical infrastructure. It's kind of interesting if you want to sit and ponder art, but as a user, we can't really have that experience. We don't have time to sit and interpret licenses and open data. We need it to be very clear and able to use. And this is the topic that really links into our work on the OpenELS program. But taking a step back, just in case you're not aware of Eurogeographics, we're a membership association for mapping and cadastral agencies in Europe. We represent 63 members in 46 countries, and we carry out a variety of membership activities, but we also do product development, and that's an important strand of our work for members and also for the wider community. The project that I'm talking about links into our programme for the development of European Location Services, and I'll say a little bit about this, but it's just been covered in another stream by my colleague Mick Corrie, and was covered at the plenary session in Barcelona as we were setting out this programme for European Location Services. But in short, the programme is about the development of a single point of access for harmonised pan-European authoritative data from national mapping and cadastral agencies. And we see a lot of benefits, both for the user and for our members and for Europe, on that development of both a single point of access technically and usability, but also this harmonization of licensing and standards and conditions, and the ability to make data easy to reuse and to access. We see the work as complementing the work of national bodies and national authorities, but working on that European level. The programme is part of a longer-term series of projects and programmes that started with the European Location Framework, which finished at the end of last year. And that developed some pilot products and services that really showed what was possible to do at that European level. And we now have a 2-year transition programme to look at how we take the outputs from that project and build upon them to create an operational service that's very customer and user focused, and develop the operational model and all of the terms around that. So we have a 2-year programme that we're now undertaking. As part of the 2-year programme, and this is the project that I wanted to talk about today, we have funding for the European Commission Connecting Europe facility for an open data element for European Location Services. So we're working with partners from our members to look specifically at the open data points in European location services during that transition programme. We see the open data element as quite important, but also it connects very well to some of the points we want to make in ELS about discoverability of data, about understanding terms of use and building that infrastructure and interface to serve out those services. The project has 4 main activities. I don't have time today to go into detail on all of these, but broadly we're covering areas like governance and policy. So the development of a framework for open data policies in Europe, understanding what's out there and what an open data policy framework might look like for NMCAs on a European level, and dealing with issues like the visualization and representation of data on international borders, and particularly on disputed or areas where we have multiple representations, and how we deal with that. We're building on the technical infrastructure that we have. We've taken from the ELF project, and we continue to develop that to make it fit for purpose for an operational service. But the technical work also includes elements such as looking at linked data and APIs and ways to make the data more accessible to users. We're developing our processes for data supply and the content that's coming in for national authorities. I'm going to talk a little bit more detail about that. But mainly, and the point that I'm personally most interested in, is the user orientation requirements. So making sure that what we develop is not just technically driven, but is really connected to what users want to do with this data and services. And on that point, I'm specifically interested in product development. That's my role with Eurogeographics. And we have got a legacy of product development in Eurogeographics, but what we're seeing is an increasing demand. It's a global marketplace for data, and there's a lot of opportunities out there for users to source data from different bodies and different places. So in order for us to make sure that authoritative data is easily accessed and able to use by users, we have to think a little about how we provide that. There's different methods of consumption. You know, we all, it's no big point to say about the changes in the use of services, etc., and also supporting new policy issues. Inspire, for example, there's been a lot of drivers in our product development strategy at Eurogeographics. But really, the customer focus, I think, is key. It's quite easy on a well, it's not easy, but it's quite straightforward on a technical level to bring services together in a technical way to demonstrate what's possible, but if it's not what's needed or it's not what's going to be used, then it doesn't really create a sustainable solution for providing these services out. And we have a lot of opportunities in the project, and we're really keen on developing this dialogue and engagement with users to help influence our development and our priorities. The project's already started with some user engagement workshops. So the project started in May. We're a few months in now. And we've been engaging with users, for example, at the Commission. And we also have some programs of work with SME engagement and commercial interests to really understand what users are using it for. And not just presenting what we have, but in-depth analysis and interviews, workshops with those users to understand what it is they're trying to do, and a kind of jobs to be done methodology, and then looking at what we have available to us and how open data services might play into that field. Of course, the content is very important. Users might have demands. We also have opportunities and constraints around what's available to us. And we have an ongoing program with our members, and maybe some of you are aware of that in the audience, looking at capacity building and helping to make these services available on a pan-European level with a number of workshops and some programs around capacity development, and we run regular webinars and training on those. And the project for European Location Framework had a lot of success in supporting the implementation of Inspire through our capacity building programs, and we look at seeing that continue through this OpenELS framework and project. Because the quality and the authoritative of the data is very important, we have been developing a data supply process that really provides both great feedback to the data providers and helps with the implementation, but also adds the important stages of quality assurance and testing into our production, so that we're providing a really great product out to our users. So those were the key points I want to touch on today. It's a very early point in the project. As I said, we started in May. We've got 2 years of funding. I thought it was very important to share the work with you because I think it's of value both to NMCAs but also the wider community. We really see OpenELS being able to provide an opportunity to really maximise the geospatial authoritative content that's out there. But as I said at the beginning, removing a little bit of the art to finding what licenses and open data out there, and providing a little bit more robustness around understanding, what's free, what's charged for, what does open mean, and what are the terms and conditions of that. There are a lot of benefits for making that data available. I'm sure I don't need to tell the audience this, but we really want to support our members and the wider community in making that data available, both for the public good and wider pan-European uses. So that's all I wanted to cover today. We have a project website that's just gone live, openels.eu. It has some details of these different work streams that we're working on. It has some information about the partners involved, and we'll be adding more to that as the project goes on to let people know what we're working on. But if you're interested either in open data product development, or if you have services that you think you might want to contribute, or you're just interested in this area in general, please get in touch with us. It's still quite early stages in the project, and we'd be really delighted to have some conversations with you. Thanks.
Thank you very much for this really a deep overview of the new project. Any question? No.
Okay, that's easy.
That's not that easy. I have one. You said that you wanted to involve the users in the process, and I think it's good. But I was wondering if it was difficult to motivate them to come and share their needs or not.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting from a base where we have some existing users of our existing products, and we know that there's an increasing desire for receiving data in different ways, that there's a desire for more detailed level of content, improved coverage, and clarification about terms and conditions on things like open data that's available in the marketplace. So I think when we mention that these are the areas that we want to work and focus on, our existing customers and some of those users are keen to engage with us. Obviously, we're working in an environment where everybody's very short of time, and everyone has a lot of priorities that they're trying to deal with in their office. So we need to be quite respectful of people's time and how we engage. So it's a bit of an art to try and keep these workshops and interviews quite tight, so we're getting the best out of people's time. But at the same time, we're finding it a really valuable exercise to spend time with people rather than sending out a survey or making assumptions about what people want. So actually asking them to describe some of the processes and the challenges that they're having in the office. So we hope that there'll be, so far we've seen really good engagement, so we hope that will continue through the project.
Okay, I also hope so. Thank you. Oh, one.
Yes, Nathalie Durat from Belgium. when I look to your open service or will be open, my question is, well, the importance is to have a full coverage of the information available for all the countries. And, well, I see a big risk is that not all the the mapping agency will be allowed to provide their service open. So for me, the question is how you could manage that, or how do you have considered this risk?
Yeah, I mean, Eurogeographics doesn't have the ability to influence or persuade national governments to make data open or not open. But what we see throughout Europe is a kind of patchwork where there's some data that's available under open data licenses, some is not. The understanding of the open data licenses is quite difficult. So, of course, if we're able to offer products with full coverage, then we expect there would be a lot of interest in that. But at the current time, we see just being able to offer products that are open, and perhaps the coverage is limited to start with, is a big step forward from where we are at the moment. So for the European Location Services Programme as a whole, we want to improve coverage of all of our products. But we think that there will be both an open data flavour to some of those, and some of those, of course, is terms and conditions that will need to be handled in a different way. So we're not expecting under Open ELS to have full coverage of all the Inspire themes for open data, for example. The aim of the project is to understand what is available and try to bring that together in a way that's more usable than it currently is.
One very last question.
Thanks for this thought. I was wondering whether it was already done somewhere, or you are not planning to find the answer through this project on the question, which would provide some map or table showing that which national mapping agencies, or which, from the Inspire perspective, Annex 1 data themes for the reference data are already made available as open data. That would be very, very useful. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that's our thinking about what we want to develop, because at the moment it's quite unclear. But as I said at the beginning, there's so many different flavors of open data license that also makes it a little bit subjective around, or unclear about to what extent things are open. We're currently working on a survey to go to our members as part of this project that will be released in the next few weeks, that asks some of these more detailed questions around open data, so we can understand a little bit fuller about the ones that, what does that open data set really mean, and look at how we can share that information back to the community. But yes, it's something that we've had a lot of interest in that. So yeah. Okay. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you. So, last presentation, last but not least, because it's about coverages. Jordi Escu, the chair of the Thematic Cluster, will talk about how he can push the implementation of coverages, both data and services in Europe.
So, thank you, Marie. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. As Marie said, I'm Jordi Escriu, and dealing with the regional spatial data infrastructure in Catalonia, and I'm working as facilitator of the Inspire Thematic Cluster 3, which is dealing with elevation, orthoimagery, reference systems, and geographical grids. And I want to present you on the different activities we are dealing in the cluster in order to help implementers with implementation of coverage data. So first of all, let's speak a few words about the thematic clusters. It's a way to, it's an open platform where we, or the European Commission is providing this initiative in order to help implementers, and the idea is to share the solutions that we are dealing in our work in a collaborative way. This involves best practices, implementation examples, sharing of issues. So the idea is to help each other in order to get forward. And in Thematic Cluster 3, as we are dealing with mainly with raster data, one of the implementation challenges that we have is the coverage data, which is a kind of format dealing with raster data. So it's in providing this raster format in YAML, okay? And in theory, a coverage is an object that describes characteristics of the real-world phenomena that may vary over space and time. So we can have different variables of data: temperature, elevation, land cover, etc. So we can have different dimensions. So it's not only data placed in over the territory, but also time series. And the coverage structure is a set of positions where we are providing these values. So the idea is quite simple. And we have different ones depending on if we consider that our variable is continuous or discrete. So these different types comes from the ISO standards. So in the case of elevation and orthoimagery, we are dealing with continuous data. Okay. The main components of coverage, in order to make a easy introduction to them. So this comes from this ISO standard. And first of all, we have the domain set, which are the collection of points where we are interested or we are providing data. Okay, this the most usual way of providing a coverage is like a rectangular grid of points. So we can consider it as point locations, but also we can consider it as a kind of grid. Okay. The range set, which is the collection of the values in such positions. We can also have the same concept, but with the idea of pixels. And the coverage function is just a theoretical thing that makes the link between these locations and the values. Okay. And finally, the range type is the element of the coverage where we can describe some metadata in order to say, okay, I'm describing temperature, my unit of measure is degrees, things like that. So it's the description of the data we are providing. And finally, we have a metadata slot where we can put any metadata files that could be shared and travel with our coverage. There have been an evolution in the implementation standards for coverages. The coverage implementation standards are namely CIS, okay? And recently OGC have approved the version 1.1 of this coverage standard. So not really available online in the OGC, but it's published. It will be published very soon. And we have here a UML model where we can find these basic elements of the coverage that we have described previously. So the idea is that our modelizations at conceptual level should stay quite tight to the implementation standard, because otherwise any extensions could be ignored by the services providing coverage data. Regarding INSPIRE coverages, the definition is the same. It's coming from the ISO standard. And the components of INSPIRE coverages are those that we have been describing, so the standard components. But INSPIRE model are also adding some extra information, which are INSPIRE-specific properties that were agreed by the thematic working groups. And this is what we are calling extensions to the OGC standard coverages. The use of coverage is quite wide in Inspire, so there are many teams dealing with them. Some of the teams use them just as an optional schema for providing the data, but for example, in case of my cluster, elevation and orthoimagery is quite pretty important because mostly the data shall be provided using this spatial representation type. At least it's one of the default representation types for providing the data. And here is an example of the current Inspire elevation model where we can find two parts. The part in the bottom, which is the elevation grid coverage schema, is introducing these specific Inspire-specific elements for elevation. But as you can see, it derives from this part modeling at the top of the UML model, which is a kind of common Inspire model for coverages, which is reduced by the different themes. This generic conceptual model for coverages, what describes it are the standard elements that defines the coverages. Okay, so any extensions are in the theme-specific part. And we can find, for example, Inspire ID as an extension, some properties related to in this case, saying the property type, if it's height information or depth information, things like that. And we have also some kind of modeling in order to define aggregations of coverages. In the case of orthoimagery, the current model is pretty the same. And we have the same structure. And in this case, we have an additional vector elements, which are the mosaic elements that could be provided in case that your coverage data, your raster data have been mosaiced. So you can define the different parts of the coverage and the mosaic elements that describes them. So regarding encoding of Inspire coverages, we are using the CIS 1.0, okay, which is namely GML-COP standard for the ranged, for the coverage, except the ranged. And regarding the values, the ranged, we have different options. First one is multi-part representations, where we have the coverage as a GML part, and then the ranged is encoded using a well-known binary format, which is embedded in the first part. The second option is quite pretty the same, using also an external binary format, but referenced using GML file element. And the third option is just providing the values within the XML, okay? So normally data providers are using the first one, multi-part representation, because often binary formats are most efficient than providing, for example, the values inside the XML. Regarding delivery, we have two different options. First is the delivering through atom feeds. So with Atom, as you know, the coverage of the territory is split in several pieces, so could be map sheets, for example, the different ortho images that we are dealing with in our organizations. And this helps us to organize the data and provide it more efficiently to the user. But this is implemented using a concrete and fixed tiling schema, okay? And regarding the efficiency of transmission of the data, the tiling approach and the server characteristics have a direct impact on such efficiency. In case we are delivering data using WGCS, which is the second option that we have, this is really the delivery medium that uses the coverage as a result. So it's a coverage is the natural response of such kind of service. And the advantage of that is that it's tiling schema independent, okay? And here, as we can retrieve a very huge amount of information, it's advisable to limit the maximum number of data that can be requested in a single query. Okay, this is just for providing efficiency. We have run in the thematic cluster different workshops, activities in order to discuss the different issues. We started with sharing information about these problems, start discussing on them, and at the end we have arrived to some conclusions that I will be describing now. And you can look for all this information in the thematic cluster. So, just a summary of the implementation issues. Many data providers are not really involved in implementing coverage data. So, for most of them, it's the first time that they are trying to implement it. Maybe just a few communities, like the meteorological community, has a good knowledge on that, because one of the advantages of using WCS services is that then you have the ability to make a further analysis with the different layers of coverages. So if you have these needs, it's really a good format for providing the information. And for those without experience, there are terminology issues. So there are different terms that are not really shared between the communities. Some mix of concepts as well. There is also coverage encoding issues because of the coverage, the evolution of the standardization standards, and there is also a need to clarify in the technical guidelines the usage of alternative encodings. And what is more important here is the extensions that the INSPIRE teams are adding to the standard coverages. So such extensions are ignored by the services, by the standard WCS interfaces, and even may cause errors. So this is something that we should look at it. And there are also some data providers that of course, this coverage data is quite huge in volume, so there is a need to make an appropriate tuning of the download services. And for those communities without experience, there is a kind of unknown of the potential of that technologies and an acceptance. So it's really the big data analytics and data computing technologies are maybe a starting for some of the communities. This is the existing model, and we are focusing in the thematic part where we can see the different extensions. So first of all the attributes that are added for the themes could be considered as extensions. We have the INSPIRE ID, the thematic properties, etc., the attributes that are dealing with the lifespan information in the INSPIRE database. We have also these relationships that involves the coverage feature types. In the case of ortho imagery is the same. Plus this vector part for describing the mosaic elements. So just a couple of thoughts. INSPIRE data models were developed at conceptual level, so we were writing data product specifications. So the problem, not the problem, but there is also a common thing of data product specifications is that they could be implemented in different ways, and if we want to achieve interoperability, So we have to be more concrete on the implementations. So the concrete implementation that, in my view, we should look is to the OGC standard interfaces. So we could may try to not go farther away with our information and try to include all Inspire-specific properties within the places which are foreseen in the OGC standards. So Inspire extensions should be avoided, let's say, or just providing the same information but in a different way. And this may cause, of course, some headaches to implementers. So what we need is to map the elements that are foreseen in the Inspire conceptual models to those in the implementation standards, minimize the impact of Inspire extensions, and for that we proposed to move these elements to the metadata slot in the coverage. So we are providing the same information, but in the good place regarding OGC standards. And also about the use of complex modeling. By complex modeling, I'm referring to coverage aggregations, as you show in the existing models, and other associations that are involving the coverage feature types, like, for example, the association which is connecting the coverage feature type in orthoimagery to the mosaic elements. And it's also a possibility to make dissemination and training activities which are offered for example, for Peter Baumann. If you are interested in running training activities in native language in your country, so you can contact the EDNA and try to set up this. And now for this, for providing a solution for this, removing these Inspire extensions, we are proposing a new model. So it's just in draft status, so we are working on it. And the idea is to remove the different elements that were included in the coverage feature type, as you can see there. At the same time, we are introducing a restriction in order to concrete the data type used in the metadata slot. The metadata slot is coming from the upper part, so from the standard component part. As you can see, it's of type any. So we are introducing a constraint in our coverage in order to concrete to a specific data type that we are defining now. Okay. And in the new data type, we are basically defining all the Inspire extensions so that they are somehow included as metadata information, which is traveling with our coverage. And in this way, we are preventing issues within the services. And particularly, one of the things is that we have replaced the associations and the aggregations that we had in previous models and introduce it as implicit references in that data types, okay, using identifiers. So this is in more detail. For the orthoimagery is the same concept, so you have it in more detail. The idea is the same. And also the association of the mosaic elements to the coverage is also implicit. So we have removed or simplified this modeling. So, and we have several alternatives here. One is to amend the existing conceptual models for coverage data, moving the extensions to the coverage metadata slot. The other alternative is to just create Inspire implementation models. So this kind of could be UML models that are concreting the implementation. So in order to avoid mismatches and different interpretations from conceptual models. And the third alternative is just a combination of both. So it's a matter of sizing if, for example, the changes in the conceptual models, which of course have an impact on the implementing rules, are advisable or not. So aspects to be further improved, and just finishing, is the mapping of identifiers. We need to map the INSPIRE identifier to the OGC coverage identifier, which is using a type which is the non-column name. So it's a type which are, you cannot use the column in the identifier string. As we are providing this INSPIRE information in a metadata file within the coverage, we should be able to retrieve coverage data using the WCS service by filtering through the information which is included in the metadata hook. So, and an idea to make this possible is to make use of XPath search. In the case of orthoimagery, we have the challenge to how to deliver jointly the coverage data plus the vector information of the mosaic elements. And there are also other possibilities which are open with the new coverage implementation standard, the version 1.1. For example, there we have the concept of coverage partitioning, instead of the one used in the INSPIRE data models, which is the coverage aggregation. And we have also an additional thing, is that in existing data models from different themes, we are providing sometimes the same information, but it's slightly modeled in a different way. So it's just an additional and maybe alternative element to take. So for the conclusions, there is a need to simplify the existing models and to align the conceptual models defined in INSPIRE on coverages and align it to the implementation standards. And for this, we are proposing near future actions, hopefully to be solved till the end of the year. So one could be the online activities in Thematic Cluster 3 in order to explain, improve, and hopefully get consensus on these proposals for changing the models. When this is done, we could go to the potential endorsement of the INSPIRE MICT, so that these changes are included in the INSPIRE framework. And also, with this in mind, we can draft a new technical guidelines for implementation and use of coverage in INSPIRE. And of course, together with this technical guideline, provide INSPIRE coverage implementation examples. So we are continuing with this activity, so your help is really welcome. So I would be willing to make a call for you to join Thematic Cluster 3 and also collaborate in this task if you are interested. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Jordi. That was a really complete presentation about the issue, and I do think that it's an important issue, and that's why I let you some extra time to explain that. But now for the question, I suggest that the people who have questions join the thematic cluster and ask there. Thanks. Bon appétit.
Thank you.